Concord employees caught bragging before the shutdown. Oh my god. How do you do this? How? How is this even possible? I don't even know what to say. This is going to be good. Yes. The gift that keeps on giving. Yes. How is this still going on? Like, it's been dead for like a week. And it's still happening. It's nuts. It's been dead for 2 weeks.
So a ton of new information has just been released about Concord, including the actual cost of the game.
I want you guys to know that there's a very real possibility that even without the refunds, I've probably made more money talking about this game than Sony made making it.
Apparently about $400 million. Prior rough estimates were between 50 million to 150 million USD. So if this figure's accurate, then it's significantly worse. This also seems...
I have received information that I cannot provide any context on, but what I can say is that this information led me to believe that the valuation of Concord was substantially higher than even the $400 million number. This can't be real. That's what I thought. It's crazy.
To make Concord Sony's largest failure ever. Amplifying that loss is that Concord apparently had the largest budget out of any Sony game that they've ever made to date, and that Sony even thought this could be their version of Star Wars, hoping to profit off Concord long into the future. That's just a quick summary of some of the new information presented by Colin Moriarty. In a clip he posted that's just over 8 minutes long. He'll go over some of this stuff in more detail, and we'll also further talk about this, and then I have another source that I also want to show you too. Now that takes us to this tweet where Colin Moriarty says, I spoke extensively with someone who worked on Concord, and it's so much worse than you think. It was internally referred to as the future of PlayStation, with Star Wars-like potential, and a dev culture of toxic positivity halted any negative feedback, making it cost $400 million. And now before I start playing what I view as some of the highlight areas of the clip, I've actually got a little more of a summary to go over, that being about the first 4 minutes of the clip, since I can just recap this pretty dang quick. But like I also mentioned, some of this we will break down in further detail. So the clip begins with him talking about this anonymous source of his, where he essentially says that someone who worked on...
It's just that, again, like, I just think that, I think that a lot of decisions were made because, like, Concord, the Concord decision was probably made pre-COVID or during COVID for Sony to acquire them, because I think they got acquired in 2021 or something like that. And so, like, basically what ended up happening is that they made a decision for something that they thought was going to happen. And, like, culturally, I think that things were a lot different back, like, pre-COVID and during COVID. I think that the gaming culture has changed a lot, because pre-COVID, I mean, that wasn't really too far off of Fortnite, really. You know, so like back then, maybe Concord did seem like the future. And that's the problem that you run into whenever you have to make decisions 8 years into the future.
Concord approached him, and he spent a great amount of time checking and confirming that that person is who they say they are. After that, he goes on to talk about the financial situation and that $400 million figure as mentioned. It sounds like by 2023, around $200 million was already spent on Concord, and that was before Sony purchased Firewalk Studios. After Sony acquired Firewalk, they spent...
You should see the valuation of the company that owns Firewalk Studios. It's pretty crazy.
Another $200 million on the game. All of that simply to get the game to minimum viability. It sounds like before Sony got involved, Firewalk was already a giant mess, doing who the heck knows what with the $200 million that they already had, because the game was apparently in a pathetic state. Although, of course, we already know how the end product also ended up being, but yeah. Okay, now with the first 4 minutes or so summarized, I'll let parts of the clip speak for itself.
The game cost about $400 million to make, soup to nuts. Sony put most of that money in. And it is not only so, because we had kind of said, like, this must be Sony's biggest loss.
And this is also, like, again, you have to contextualize this, that he was explaining that it took $400 million. It should have been $400. $400 million in order to get it to where it is the minimum viable product. This isn't like to make it as good as Elden Ring was on release. This is just like, this is good enough so we can ship it out the door.
Ever on a game, and it is. It's the biggest game Sony's ever released from a budgetary standpoint from the first party or second party. So let that sink in.
It's crazy.
And it's totally unintuitive. There are games that are in development right now at Sony first and second party that are more expensive than this. But as of the games that have come out so far, so think about like Spider-Man 2 and so on and so forth. We know The Last of Us Part 2 cost $220 million. Spider-Man 3 is going to cost about $350 million. This game cost more than that. And they lost all of it because they made no money. They made about $1 million gross revenue, and then they gave it all back. So this is a huge, multiple hundreds of millions of dollar loss.
So now skipping ahead, here's where he talks about
yeah, the people that made this decision need to make sure that they take out a really good life insurance policy. Because after Boeing deals with the strike, there's going to be a lot of people that are looking for work. Not the people that were working, that were striking. I'm not talking about them.
Like Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Like Sony really thought this would be their Star Wars.
Yeah,
they really thought they
got
were
a life
make
insurance
so
policy.
much money for years and years off Concord. The situation was already amusing when we thought they spent like $50 to $150 million on this game.
Yeah.
And it's just like astronomically worse than that.
The idea behind this was, and the term apparently verbatim had been used, that Concord is the future of PlayStation. That they had such major ambition for this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony. That it can be repeatedly revisited over and over and over again, not only in cross-media, but in what we were seeing.
You know, like a lot of this, I'm not really going to pause a lot of it because I already watched this part. I was, there's like other information about this, so I don't really want to like rehash all of it. But I do think that it is a little bit telling that the credits scene did kind of mirror the way the texts are shown in Star Wars, right? It was off center and it was a little bit different, but it wasn't totally different, was it?
Already kind of seen little bits of it. So the weekly story vignettes that they were going to release, and then of course the inclusion in Amazon's Secret Levels anthology, that's like just scratching the surface of it. Ironically, the game was codenamed Chaos behind the scenes. And
they should have gone with that.
A major thing about the game is that there was, and I think we can kind of get this vibe from just the nature of the people making it and kind of the way the game reads and all that, a toxic positivity vibe. Yeah. You weren't allowed to say anything.
They could have also called it Columbia. I think that would have worked too.
Apparently internally about this game.
Okay, let's pause again because that's absolutely hilarious. First of all, that in of itself is hilarious. But the way he phrased that too, like I think we could kind of tell because of the sort of people that worked on the game. And it's like, yeah, no kidding. For example, look how some of them acted as soon as people started criticizing the game. We had that one Concord dev calling anyone who criticized the game, quote unquote, talentless freaks. Dude was like, freak.
Dude, this is my favorite part probably of all of the Concord drama. Because I am the only person that I know that uses that term. That's from me. I mean, maybe, right? They came up with the same term. It's not that crazy, but like, it's still really funny to think.
Speaking out on their Twitter account, insulting people, and then going into protected mode, and even removing Concord from their own bio. Then there was that
smart.
Senior concept artist Amanda, who saw another artist criticizing the designs of Concord. And then Amanda was saying in this post, the character concept art team, including myself, is going through an extremely difficult time emotionally.
Well, yeah, I mean, I bet they are. But the problem is that you should have gone through that difficult time emotionally when you got feedback, and then you wouldn't have the problem you have now. How about that?
Some on the team no longer want to work in games, design characters, or even do art anymore after this. Because of this, posts like yours, though understandable, are unfortunately ill-timed. None of us know which way the wind will blow at the studio. We're worried.
It's crazy how nobody at the studio knows what's going to happen, but everybody outside the studio. Do you guys know what's going to happen with the studio? Because I think I do. I think I've got an idea of what I think might happen.
Sick and terrified of the future. Not only that, but we have been shouldering the brunt of the emotional labor. Yeah, no, this whole thing that I read before, I don't want to repeat the entire thing. Yeah. The point is, this whole toxic positivity thing at their company really checks out. These people acted like they never got criticism before, and then as soon as they got any, they displayed immense levels of unprofessionalism. Returning to the clip, we left off here.
You weren't allowed to say anything, apparently internally, about this game. About how, like, something's wrong with it. Character designs are not right. and so on and so forth. They really truly believe this was Herman Hulst's baby, apparently. And he internally was himself a massive champion of the game. So it's not that. So the reason I'm telling you,
I would, if I was Herman, I would be taking out a life insurance policy right now, bro. Like, that was a lot of money. Yeah, like
all of this. It's some
That's
interesting
a
information,
lot.
of course, but it's that I had said when people were like, Concord lost $200 million. Now, people were pulling that money out because that's basically how much like some of the first party games like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 2, etc., kind of cost in that frame. And I was like, there's no way that it costs that much. I was saying like it cost 9 figures probably, like low $100 million, but there's no way it cost $200 million. No, it cost $400 million. So
wow.
And I am totally solid on this source, by the way. So that's why I'm willing to share it with you. Because again, I'm not really a journalist. So
as I said, look into the valuation of the company that owns the company that made Concord. Crazy.
Yeah, the big things to take away: $400 million loss. The game was in horrible shape as of 18 months ago before release. Not even monetization, no onboarding, most content not even there. The game was in such bad shape at that point that they spent the budget of it again in urgent outsourcing to get the game finished from all of these different angles over an 18-month period. Internally, the game was considered part of the future of PlayStation with heavy cross-media references and a system of toxic positivity surrounding it that didn't allow anyone to meaningfully change the course of the game.
So well done,
Sad.
Colin, on getting all that information. And I now present to you a Kotaku journalist. I know, Kotaku.
Ooh,
I know.
exciting.
Let's just see what he says here real quick. He says, I can corroborate the part about toxic positivity. Some sources I've spoken with blamed a head in the sand mentality carried over from the studio's Bungie roots. A sense the game would come together because the team was too good to fail. I'll have more next week. And also in Concord news,
the funny thing is that's actually what CD Projekt Red said about themselves with Cyberpunk. And you know, as with every other ancient Greek story, hubris is their downfall. There it is, right? I mean, fuck. Yeah, classic ego. Yep.
This. From GamesIndustry.biz, they say Concord director reportedly steps down, Firewalk fears layoffs. A quote from a former developer saying, Ryan deeply believed in that project and bringing players together through the joy in it.
There's people that believe the earth is flat, too. That doesn't really mean a whole lot to me. Just means
Regardless of there being things that he could have done differently throughout development, he's a good human and full of heart. They add, sources also claim that Firewalk...
I disagree with that. I think that if you lead your team into the darkness and you cause them to fail, there is not good in that. This is not a good thing. Being a good person, like, oh yeah, it's being a good person. You're being a bad leader. As a leader, your responsibility is to ensure that the people that have entrusted their livelihoods and their lives in you, you've got to bring home the bacon, man. And you didn't do that. And now all of them are risking their jobs. So you want to have, there's always this issue, and this is a big problem, is that a lot of people view leadership as power, but it is more than power. It's responsibility. And if you use that responsibility that you have as a leader to not exercise it in a way that is measured and reasoned and intelligent, what you do is you're betraying the people that have put their trust in you. That's the issue that a lot of people in leadership positions don't have. They don't get it. With great power comes great responsibility. Well, it's which one begets the other. The power is because of the responsibility. The responsibility is not because of the power. The responsibility is where things begin, and you derive power as a means to exercise that responsibility. A lot of people really don't understand how to be a leader in different positions. I know for me, I learned a lot from, like, especially, this might sound stupid, but I learned a lot from being like a raid leader in WoW and having to deal with guilds. Because these are people that they don't have a career based off of like what you're doing. Like you can't really fire them. You don't have money. You can't hold anything over them. Like, so you have to get people to follow you and listen to you completely voluntarily without the worry of losing their livelihoods. And if you have that, you've got to figure out how to get along with people. You've got to figure out how to talk to people the right way. Not paying them. Yeah, they're not getting paid. Like, and that, like, that's hard to do, man.
Staff are uncertain of the studio's future. Some reportedly believe that it could become a co-development studio on other Sony projects, while many have allegedly shared concerns of layoffs and a possible shutdown of the studio.
Possible.
In Concord's official statement regarding
possible.
the shutdown of the game, they did technically imply that they might relaunch the game at some point in the future. Obviously, that already seemed highly unlikely, and it seems to only be getting even less probable. At least it's given all of us a lot of entertainment, and it's hopefully been a giant wake-up call for the greedy AAA industry. As for this segment, I'll leave it there. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Consider letting me know what you think about this stuff in the comments, and if you enjoyed my coverage, then also consider liking and or subscribing to the channel. Appreciate ya, and I'll see you in the next one.
I actually thought
so. The other day, I was
just a minute. I actually thought this was a lot of this was like kind of older stuff that I'd already seen before. But like the tweets and everything about like how the toxic positivity and everything, this is not really a surprise at all. I think that if you really look at how this happened, yeah, a lot of this, yeah, we've seen a lot of this stuff already from the video. I'll link you guys the video though. Didn't say anything in the video. Well, it's more that like I had covered it. I thought there was new stuff about the employees, but not really quite as much. But it's a mentality that's infected everything beyond gaming. I think the problem is that also. So again, like you can blame things on you know, like woke stuff, etc. But I think it actually just does become this simple that when the leadership team is like really gung-ho and like super brainwashed into thinking something is going to be the future, it's really hard to disabuse them of that notion without making yourself their enemy. And I think that's what's happened here, is that these people have, you know, like you don't want to speak out or say that there are problems with the game, because if you do that, you're killing the vibes, right? Like now it's like, are you on the team or not? And it's like, the truth is like this, and this is again, a problem with toxic positivity, because I think that almost all workplace culture and like all like community culture, most of these things happen, like there's a trickle down effect of it. And so, yeah, you can have like woke bullshit and like, yeah, this is a factor. But the main reason why this is like achieved is by the leadership and the people that are in charge that create the culture, and then it permeates down the ladder. And I think that's what really happens the most. The reason they couldn't speak out is because it was woke. Well, it's both things, right? It's like, yeah, you can't like, because you think about it, right? If you say maybe we shouldn't have pronouns in the game, I can guarantee you that I bet people at the studio would have said that's bigoted or something like that. Or, oh, well, you're siding with people that are homophobic or something like that. So do you really want to risk your job on that? Do you really want to put yourself at risk for that reason? I would say abso-fucking-lutely not. No, like you want to just keep your career. Like it's something like a lot of you guys, I'm sure that everybody does this at their job. There are things about your job that you don't like and aspects of your job that you're not a fan of, but you just deal with it because that's what happens whenever you have a job. And so you're not going to constantly fight everything, every issue, etc. That's it. Give the robot pronouns bigot. Yeah, I complain still. What's driven with the woke mind virus? Toxic positivity? Yeah, I think there's a lot of toxic positivity that happens a lot. Yeah, saying you're too good to fail is wild. Well, hey, you know, a game would have come together because the team was too good to fail. Yep, that's what CD Projekt Red thought with Cyberpunk. And they had to spend multiple years and probably tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars working to rebuild that reputation. And it took them years. And even now, people bring up Cyberpunk on release as an example of a bad game. So, yep. And CD Projekt Red, by the way, however good these people thought they were, they didn't make Witcher 3.